Started in Chicago. House music started in Chicago. And it started from a guy by the name of Frankie Knuckles, who was from Brooklyn, New York. Did I put that in there? He was asked to play in a club in Chicago called The Warehouse. He moved to Chicago and played music, and he was playing in the same tradition that they were doing in New York City at the time. He would spin the breakback on disco songs. They didn't know about that in Chicago at the time because there was no internet and no YouTube to let them know that. The world was a lot bigger place. So he would spin the breaks back on these disco songs, and a lot of the disco songs he played were the Philadelphia Sound Gamble and Huff disco songs. If you know that sound, it's usually 4/4. 4/4 is.
Don't know that sound. Google it.
Google it.
Gamble and Huff, Philadelphia Sound. Educate yourself about music. That sound is crucial to understanding not just house music, but R&B music in general.
So the Philadelphia Sound was very 4/4, especially Gamble and Huff was. So he would play these breaks back. That was 4/4, right? People loved the sound. People couldn't figure out what he was doing. They would go to the record store. I know many of you don't know what the record store is. Google it. He would go to the record store. They would go to the record store and they would ask for the music that Frankie was playing. What's the music that Frankie was playing in the club? What's the music he was playing at the warehouse? What's that warehouse music? Do you have that house music? Got chopped down and that to house music, and that's how the name came. Now, the sound moves to New York. Let's just quickly throw it in New York. In New York, at that time, Stretch and those guys were dancing in clubs like Latin Quarter and Rooftop, and he could tell you that they were extremely violent because it was height of crack era in New York City. So they were violent.
Political atmosphere, we won't cover that now.
But it was extremely violent. They had these clubs in New York that people would go to, and they danced to funk music, disco music, and new to New York, house music. Now some of the people that hung out with Stretch, like Khalif and these guys, would start to go to these clubs where there was this music played. One of the clubs was choice.
The reason why we went to the house clubs because the hip hop clubs were all closing. They closed the hip hop clubs for insurance purposes because it was too dangerous. Again, the social, political climate at the time made it so dangerous that when you went to a club, if you escaped alive, you were happy. So eventually that caught up with the culture and started closing all the hip hop clubs. All of the hip hop kids needed somewhere to go.
And they went to the clubs that were playing funk, disco, and new to New York house music. Now, the hip hop kids injected their movement into what was going on. This is why it trips me out when people try to separate hip hop and house. The same people, the same exact movement, just to bent around this other sound. With this other sound was pretty much the same damn sound that hip hop had.
Look up disco. Now, original disco, early 70s, funk and R&B bass. Then you have traditional disco, later 70s. Look up the origins of hip hop. You'll find that a lot of the hip hop DJs, a lot of the hip hop crews had what? Disco in their name. Because that was a big part of what was happening in the beginnings of hip hop culture. Disco and funk play, go hand in hand with hip hop culture. Now house comes out of that exact same culture. It's like the, sister or evil twin. It just moves a little bit faster.
So they ingested their movement into that club scene, but also at the time on that club scene, they were the same exact scene. There were already dances that were done, what people now call lofting, which people who used to go to the club called the loft just called dancing. There was the hustle, there was salsa, there was all this stuff there. There was the Webo dance, Google it. There's all this stuff already there. And the Webo dance, by the way, comes from rocking. People who rock when you start to do the Webo dance. Rocking is hip hop's fullest. rocking is hip hop to the fullest. So it all came into these places, and it developed over time with people's personalities and people's personal movements and different cultures being injected into it to the dance that we know now. So the thing about New York City dance is that differs from, thank you, that differs from from some of the West Coast dances is New York has a club culture. New York has a club culture. We don't club as an activity on a Saturday. We go to the club on Tuesday and on Monday. And so it's not like, oh, let's get dressed and get ready to go. No, we just went to the club. It's normal for us. While on the West Coast, really there is no club culture. The club closed at 2. And at 2 o'clock is when we're getting ready to go to the club in New York. So because of that, our dances are community dances. We all throw into the pot. He moves different. We all move different, but the same. And another thing is, in New York, you cannot pick out the creator of house dance, the creator of breaking, the creator of hip hop, because they're community dances. On the West Coast, you can't pick out the creator of locking, pick out the creator of popping. So, house dance is New York City at the fullest, because it came from the hip hop world, from the disco world, from the salsa world, from the hustle world. So everything thrown in, all these movements thrown in, is what spawned house dance as we know it. And I always say that I am not a house dancer, I'm a dancer. Because if you strip all that other stuff away, you just dance. Take away the title. And we didn't really, I never called myself a house dancer. The Japanese called me a house dancer. I was a dancer. I just was dancing to the music that was on. So at the end of the day, we're just dancing. At the end of the day, we're just dancing.
Those writing stuff down.